Richard glanced at the production report I'd spent 3 weeks preparing, shrugged and said, "Garrett, you're solid technical talent, but leadership needs vision." In under 5 minutes, 12 years of keeping their manufacturing lines running was dismissed like a software glitch. Instead of the polite nod he expected, I reached for a folded letter in my shirt pocket. If I don't have the vision to lead, maybe TechCore doesn't have the vision to keep me. That was the moment my resignation became the most expensive lesson in corporate management they'd ever receive. My name is Garrett Thompson, and at 49 years old, I'd convinced myself that hard work and competence still mattered in American manufacturing. I was the senior operations manager at TechCore Industries, a father trying to build a college fund for my 16-year-old son Brandon, and the guy who kept $8.5 million worth of production equipment from turning into very expensive paperweights. But sitting in that sterile conference room in downtown Dallas, watching the Texas heat shimmer off the parking lot below, I realized I'd been playing by rules that didn't exist anymore. Richard Caldwell sat across from me in his tailored suit, the kind of guy who'd gotten his MBA from Northwestern and thought that made him smarter than the people who actually built things. Between us lay my comprehensive efficiency analysis, 47 pages of data showing how I'd reduced downtime by 23% and saved the company $1.2 million in preventive maintenance costs over the past year. He wasn't reading it, he was performing the theater of consideration. The report represented more than numbers. It was proof of the nights I'd spent crawling through equipment bays, feeling for loose mounting bolts that could shut down a 50,000 per hour production line. It was documentation of the early morning calls when a sensor failure threatened to ruin an entire batch run, and I'd talk a panicked technician through the diagnostic sequence over the phone. It was evidence of 12 years spent learning every vibration, every temperature variance, every subtle sound that meant the difference between smooth operations and catastrophic failure. Richard closed the folder and gave me that patronizing smile I'd learned to hate. "Look, Garrett, this is good work, really good. But when I think about the Director of Manufacturing Operations role, I need someone who can see the big picture. Someone who can interface with corporate stakeholders and drive strategic initiatives. Interface with corporate stakeholders. Drive strategic initiatives." The corporate buzzword bingo was starting early today. I've been driving results for over a decade, I said, keeping my voice steady. "Those strategic initiatives you're talking about, I've been implementing them on the factory floor while you've been presenting them in PowerPoint." Richard waved his hand dismissively. "That's exactly what I mean. You're focused on the operational weeds. Leadership is about vision, about inspiring teams to embrace transformational change." I felt the familiar weight of my steel thermos in my hand, the one I'd carried since my first factory job 25 years ago. The metal was warm from the coffee inside, and I could feel the slight dent on one side where it had been dropped during a plant emergency in 2018. I unscrewed the cap slowly, buying time to process what I was hearing. "Richard," I said, "when Line 3 went down last month, and we had Industrial Dynamics breathing down our necks about their delivery schedule, who fixed it? When the PLC controller started throwing random faults and the vendor said they needed a week to send a technician who crawled into that cabinet at 2 a.m. and traced the problem to a single loose wire." "You did," he admitted. "And that's valuable, Garrett. That's why we need you right here. Doing what you do best, there it was. The golden handcuffs disguised as praise. I was too valuable to promote because I was too useful to lose from my current position. I was the guy who kept their world running, which apparently made me unqualified to officially run anything." I looked at Richard, really looked at him. He was 42 years old, had never operated a piece of manufacturing equipment in his life, and genuinely believed that management was about talking rather than doing. He'd been hired 18 months ago to modernize our operational paradigm, his words, not mine. Since then, he'd reorganized the reporting structure twice, implemented 3 new software systems that nobody asked for, and managed to increase our paperwork burden by 40% while contributing exactly 0 improvements to actual production output. "So let me understand this correctly," I said, setting my thermos down with deliberate precision. "I can architect the solution for an $8.5 million manufacturing contract, but I lack the vision to manage the people implementing it." Richard's smile faltered slightly. "It's not about technical capability, Garrett. It's about executive presence. It's about the ability to communicate with C-level stakeholders and represent our division at the corporate level. Executive presence. The ultimate corporate non-answers. It meant I didn't play golf with the VP. It meant I preferred steel-toed boots to Italian leather shoes. It meant I spoke in terms of measurable results instead of synergistic paradigm shifts." "I see," I said. I reached into my shirt pocket and pulled out the letter I'd written the night before, never really believing I'd use it. The paper was crisp, white, and final. Then I guess you won't mind if I take my lack of executive presence somewhere. It's appreciated. I placed the resignation letter on the polished conference table between us and spun it so Richard could read it. The text was brief, 2 paragraphs, a signature, and a date 2 weeks in the future. Richard's confident expression cracked. "What is this?" "My resignation," I said calmly. "Effective 2 weeks from today. If I don't have the vision to lead here, I'm sure someone else will appreciate what I bring to the table." "Garrett, come on. Don't be dramatic. You're upset. I get it. But let's not make any hasty decisions. We have the Industrial Dynamics Expansion Project starting next month. The whole production schedule depends on your expertise." "The production schedule depends on following the procedures I documented 3 years ago," I replied. "Everything's in the manual. Section 4, subsection 2.3 covers the exact startup sequence for new line integration." Richard laughed, but it sounded nervous. "Nobody reads those manuals, Garrett. You know that. We need you to handle this personally. Look, maybe we can revisit the promotion discussion in 6 months. Give me time to build a case with upper management." 6 months. The same carrot I'd been chasing for the past 3 years. 6 months of hoping that next time would be different, that next time my work would speak louder than his politics. "I appreciate the offer," I said, standing up and pocketing the letter's carbon copy, "but I've already accepted a position elsewhere. Director of Manufacturing Operations at Apex Solutions in Austin. They seem to think my vision is exactly what they need." It wasn't technically true yet, but it would be. The recruiter had been calling for 2 months, and I'd finally returned her call the night before. The conversation had gone better than I'd expected. Richard stared at the resignation letter as if it might disappear if he blinked hard enough. "You can't be serious. We're talking about your career here, Garrett. TechCore has been your home for over a decade. TechCore has been my job," I corrected. "My home is where my son lives. My career is what I make of it going forward." I walked out of that conference room with a strange sense of lightness, like a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had suddenly lifted. For 12 years, I'd been the invisible infrastructure that kept their operation running. I'd been the guy who got called at midnight when something broke, who worked through weekends to prevent Monday morning crises, who traded family time for corporate stability that was never actually stable. The next 2 weeks were going to be interesting. Day 1 of my notice period was different. For the first time in 12 years, I didn't arrive at the plant at 6 a.m. to check overnight reports and prepare for potential issues. I rolled in at 8:30, grabbed my coffee, and sat at my desk to organize my handover documentation. By 9:15, the first crisis hit. Jason Palmer, one of the younger technicians, came running over looking like he'd seen a ghost. "Garrett, line 2 is showing pressure variance alerts. The system's threatening to auto-shut down, and I can't figure out what's wrong. The display screen is throwing codes I've never seen before." In the old days, I would have dropped everything, rushed to the line, and spent however long it took to diagnose and fix the problem. Today, I looked at Jason with genuine sympathy, checked the troubleshooting manual. "Section 12, I said. "It covers pressure system diagnostics step by step. If the manual doesn't solve it, submit a work order to maintenance." Jason blinked, "But that could take hours. Production will be down all morning." "Then that's the cost of following proper procedures," I replied. "I'm focusing on knowledge transfer documentation right now. Can't be pulled away for operational issues." I wasn't being cruel. I was being exactly what my job description said I should be, a manager who followed protocols instead of a firefighter who enabled dysfunction. By 10:30, Richard was at my desk. "Garrett, what's this I hear about you refusing to help with the Line 2 issue?" I directed Jason to the appropriate resources. I said without looking up from my computer. "The troubleshooting procedures are clearly documented. Following them builds competency in the team." "Cut the corporate speak," Richard said, his voice tight. "We need that line running. Just fix it." I turned in my chair to face him directly. "Richard, for the past year you've emphasized the importance of following proper channels and building sustainable processes. I'm doing exactly that. If the documented procedures aren't sufficient, maybe we should invest in better training or improved documentation." He knew he was trapped. He couldn't order me to bypass the same procedures he'd been preaching about in safety meetings. And he sure couldn't fix the problem himself. He didn't even know which end of a pressure gauge to read. The line stayed down for 4 hours. The total cost in lost production was approximately $180,000. The problem turned out to be a simple calibration issue that I could have fixed in 15 minutes. Instead, it took a vendor service call and half a day of downtime because nobody else had bothered to learn the diagnostic sequence I'd been using for years. Day 3 brought the real test. I was updating the equipment maintenance schedules when my phone buzzed with a text from Pablo Rodriguez, my main contact at Industrial Dynamics. Pablo and I had worked together for 8 years. When TechCore promised delivery schedules, Pablo trusted them because he trusted me to make them happen. Garrett, we're seeing irregularities in the quality control data from yesterday's batch run. Numbers don't look right. Can you double-check the calibration settings on the testing equipment? I stared at the text message. In the past, I would have immediately logged into the system, run the diagnostics, and called Pablo back with answers within the hour. Our relationship was built on that kind of responsiveness, that personal attention to his company's needs. Instead, I forwarded the text to Richard with a note. QC issue from Industrial Dynamics. This should go through proper customer service channels. 3 hours later, Pablo called me directly. Garrett, I sent a message this morning about quality control issues. Nobody's gotten back to me, and my production manager is getting nervous. We've got a delivery deadline Tuesday, and if this batch is no good, we're in serious trouble. Pablo, I'm sorry, but I'm in transition mode, I said, hating every word. You'll need to contact our customer service department. They'll route your inquiry to the appropriate technical team. The silence on the other end of the line was painful. Pablo and I had solved dozens of problems together over the years. I'd taken his calls at midnight on weekends during my son's baseball games. Our professional relationship was built on trust and direct communication, not corporate phone trees. Garrett, Pablo said, finally, what's going on over there? I'm wrapping up my time at TechCore, I told him, moving on to new opportunities. Another pause. Does this have anything to do with the runaround I'm getting on this quality issue? I can't comment on current operational procedures, I said. But I will say this, you might want to document everything in writing going forward. Pablo was smart enough to read between the lines. I see. Well, good luck with wherever you're headed, Garrett. You've always been straight with us. By the end of the first week, the cracks were showing. Small problems that I used to handle before they became big problems were cascading into expensive delays. Richard was spending most of his time in damage control mode, trying to explain to increasingly frustrated customers why deliveries were behind schedule and quality was inconsistent. The breaking point came on day 9. I was cleaning out my desk drawers when Vincent Morrison, the VP of Operations, appeared at my cubicle. Vincent was the kind of executive who usually communicated through his assistant, so seeing him on the factory floor meant something serious was happening. Garrett, he said, I need you in conference room A now. The room was packed with people I rarely saw in the same place at the same time. Vincent at the head of the table, Richard looking like he hadn't slept in days. Diana Westbrook from HR with a legal pad full of notes and 3 other managers I recognized but didn't work with directly. Close the door, Vincent said. I sat down and waited. Vincent wasn't the type to waste time with small talk. Industrial Dynamics is threatening to cancel their contract, he said without preamble, $8.5 million in annual revenue. They're citing quality control issues, delivery delays, and lack of technical support responsiveness. He slid a printed email across the table to me. I read it quickly, recognizing Pablo's measured but firm language. The message was professional but clear. Industrial Dynamics had lost confidence in TechCore's ability to meet their manufacturing requirements. They've specifically requested a technical review meeting, Vincent continued. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and Garrett, they asked for you by name. The room went quiet. I could feel Richard's eyes burning a hole in the side of my head. I'm in my notice period, I said calmly. I'm focusing on knowledge transfer and documentation. I need you in that meeting, Vincent said. This is an $8.5 million relationship, and they trust you. If we lose Industrial Dynamics, it's 15% of our annual revenue. I looked around the table at the faces staring back at me. These were the people who had decided I wasn't ready for leadership. Now they needed me to save the company's biggest account. I'll attend the meeting, I said. But I have conditions. Vincent leaned forward. Name them. First, I attend as a technical consultant only. I'm not the account manager. I'm not the project lead. I'll provide technical expertise, but the relationship management is Richard's responsibility. Richard shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Second, I want everything documented. Official meeting minutes, recorded decisions, clear action items. If this goes sideways, I'm not taking the blame. Agreed, Vincent said immediately. Third, after tomorrow's meeting, I'm done. My last day stands as scheduled. No extensions, no special projects, no emergency consulting. You'll need to find sustainable solutions that don't depend on me personally. Vincent nodded. Understood. The meeting with Industrial Dynamics the next morning was brutal. Pablo brought their head of operations and their chief engineer. They weren't there to negotiate. They were there to deliver an ultimatum. We've been partners for 8 years, Pablo said, looking directly at me. That partnership was built on trust, reliability, and technical excellence. Over the past 2 weeks, we've seen a complete breakdown in all 3 areas. He pulled out a folder thick with documentation, quality control failures on 3 separate batch runs, delivery delays totaling 12 days across 4 different orders, and most concerning, a complete lack of technical support when we've identified problems. Richard jumped in with his practiced corporate smooth talk. Pablo, we understand your concerns and we're committed to addressing these issues through improved process optimization and enhanced communication protocols. Pablo's expression didn't change. Richard, with all due respect, we don't need improved communication protocols. We need competent technical support. When we call with a problem, we need to talk to someone who understands our manufacturing requirements, not someone who needs to escalate to 3 different departments. The room temperature seemed to drop about 10 degrees. The person we trust, Pablo continued, is Garrett. He's never once failed to deliver a solution when we've had a critical issue. But apparently he's no longer available to support our account. Vincent looked at me. Richard looked at me. Diana Westbrook looked at me. That's correct, I said. I'm transitioning to a new role at Apex Solutions in Austin. Pablo smiled for the first time that morning. Apex Solutions, they're doing interesting work in advanced manufacturing systems. Yes, they are, I replied. I'll be their director of manufacturing operations. The silence that followed was deafening. Pablo exchanged glances with his colleagues, and I could see the wheels turning. Gentlemen, Pablo said, standing up, I think we have our answer. Industrial Dynamics will be moving our manufacturing partnership to Apex Solutions, effective 60 days from today. We'll work with TechCore on an orderly transition, but our future production requirements will be handled by Garrett's new team. Richard's face went white. Vincent looked like he'd been hit by a truck. Pablo, wait, Vincent said. We can restructure the account management. We can put Garrett back as the primary technical contact. Garrett doesn't work here anymore. Pablo replied simply. You made that decision when you decided he wasn't leadership material. We're making ours. After Industrial Dynamics left, the conference room erupted into chaos. Richard was frantically trying to explain how this wasn't his fault. Vincent was calculating the revenue impact. Diana was taking notes for what was probably going to be a very uncomfortable conversation with the CEO. I sat quietly, sipping my coffee from the steel thermos, feeling the familiar weight of it in my hands. Everything was proceeding exactly as it should. Garrett, Vincent said, finally, what will it take to keep you here? I can override the promotion decision. I can match whatever Apex is paying you. We can restructure your entire department. I stood up and gathered my notes. Vincent, this isn't about money or titles. It's about respect. You had 12 years to recognize what I brought to this company. You chose not to. Apex recognized it in one phone conversation. I walked toward the door, then paused. The quality control issue Pablo mentioned, it's a calibration drift in the testing equipment. Section 23 of the maintenance manual covers the adjustment procedure. Takes about 20 minutes if you follow the checklist. Richard scrambled for his phone, probably calling maintenance. Of course, I added, you'll need someone who actually reads the manuals to find that information. That afternoon, word spread through the plant like wildfire. The biggest client was leaving, and they were following me to my new job. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know what Apex Solutions was offering, what kind of benefits they had, whether they were hiring. Tony Russo from maintenance cornered me near the coffee machine. Garrett, is it true? Industrial Dynamics is really pulling their contract? That's what Pablo said in the meeting. Tony whistled low. That's gonna hurt. We're probably looking at layoffs if they can't replace that revenue. I poured my coffee slowly, letting the steam rise from my cup. Maybe management will finally start reading those procedure manuals, right? Tony laughed bitterly. Or maybe they'll finally realize that keeping good people costs less than replacing million-dollar contracts. As I walked back to my desk, I passed Richard's office. Through the glass walls, I could see him on the phone, gesturing wildly. His voice was muffled, but his body language told the story. He was in full panic mode, trying to explain to someone higher up the food chain how his department had just lost the company's most profitable account. My last day at TechCore was quiet. I finished the handover documentation, cleaned out my desk, and turned in my security badge. Richard avoided eye contact. Vincent had left early for an emergency meeting with the board of directors. The Industrial Dynamics cancellation was going to hit the quarterly numbers hard. As I walked out to the parking lot, my phone buzzed with a text from Brandon. Dad, did you really quit your job? I got in my truck and typed back. I changed jobs, son. Sometimes that's what you have to do when people don't appreciate what you bring to the table. Are you okay? I looked back at the TechCore building where people were probably running around trying to figure out how to replace 12 years of institutional knowledge in a matter of weeks. I'm better than okay, I texted back. I start Monday as Director of Manufacturing Operations at Apex Solutions. 65% salary increase, full benefits, and they're giving me equity in the company. And the best part, they hired me because they wanted my experience. Not despite it. That's awesome, Dad. Does this mean you can make it to more of my mechanical club meetings? I smiled and started the engine count on it. The drive to Austin for my first day took 3 hours. The Apex Solutions facility was modern, clean, and humming with the kind of organized activity that comes from competent management. My new office had a window, a door that closed, and a nameplate that read Garrett Thompson, Director of Manufacturing Operations. On my desk was a welcome packet and a note from the CEO. Welcome aboard, Garrett. We're excited to have your expertise on our team. Pablo Rodriguez speaks very highly of your technical capabilities and professional integrity. Looking forward to building something great together. I opened my steel thermos and poured a cup of coffee. Through my office window, I could see the production floor where skilled technicians were assembling advanced manufacturing equipment. These were people who understood the difference between talking about quality and delivering it. My phone rang. The caller ID showed a TechCore number. I let it go to voicemail. 2 months later, I heard through industry contacts that TechCore had laid off 30% of their workforce after losing 2 more major contracts. Richard Caldwell had been transitioned to new opportunities, which was corporate speak for fired. Vincent Morrison was probably still trying to explain to the board how they'd managed to lose their most profitable client relationship in a single meeting. The layoffs hurt. I knew most of those people personally. Tony Russo from maintenance, Jason Palmer from the tech team, Michelle Foster from accounting. Good people who got caught in the crossfire of bad management decisions. Some of them reached out to me through LinkedIn, asking if Apex was hiring. We were, and I was able to help a few of them land on their feet. But that's the thing about corporate loyalty. It only flows one direction until you stop the flow yourself. Pablo Rodriguez turned out to be more than just a client contact. He became a genuine business partner. Industrial Dynamics wasn't just moving their manufacturing contract to Apex. They were expanding it. The relationship I'd built over 8 years was now worth $12 million annually, and Pablo made it clear that Garrett Thompson was the reason they felt confident in that investment. At my 6-month review at Apex, the CEO pulled me into his office. Garrett, I want you to know that bringing you on board was the best hiring decision we've made in years. The Industrial Dynamics expansion has put us on the map. We're fielding calls from companies who want to work with that manufacturing expert who knows how to actually solve problems. He slid a document across his desk. This is your equity stake adjustment. You're now a genuine partner in what we're building here. I looked at the numbers and had to read them twice. My ownership percentage had doubled. My annual compensation was now triple what TechCore had been paying me. More importantly, I was working for people who valued competence over politics, results over presentations. That evening, I drove to Brandon's mechanical club meeting. It was being held in the garage behind the high school, and 15 teenagers were taking apart and rebuilding small engines under the supervision of Mr. Peterson, the shop teacher. Brandon saw me walk in and grinned. Dad, perfect timing. We're working on compression ratios. Want to show them how to read the measurements? I rolled up my sleeves and walked over to the workbench. For the next hour, I helped those kids understand the relationship between compression, power output, and engine efficiency. No PowerPoints, no strategic initiatives, just hands-on problem solving with measurable results. On the drive home, Brandon was quiet for a while. Dad, he finally said, I'm glad you left that other job. You seem different now, happier. I'm different, I told him. I'm working for people who understand that experience has value. Will you teach me some of that stuff? The manufacturing processes and quality control? I looked at my son, this kid who was about to turn 17 and start thinking seriously about his future. Absolutely. But first rule, learn to read the manual. Everything you need to know is usually documented somewhere. Most people just don't bother to look. Brandon laughed. Like your old boss? Exactly like my old boss. 6 months after that, I got a call from a headhunter. A major aerospace manufacturer was looking for a VP of operations. The salary figure they mentioned made my eyes widen. But when I asked about their company culture, about how they treated experienced technical professionals, the answers were all wrong. Too much emphasis on executive presence, not enough on actual competence. Thanks, I told the recruiter, but I'm exactly where I need to be. Because here's what I learned from those 2 weeks that changed everything. Your value isn't determined by the people who refuse to see it. Your worth isn't defined by managers who mistake talking for leading. And sometimes the best career move is the one that scares your current employer into realizing what they're losing. I spent 12 years making other people successful at TechCore. Now I'm building something where success is shared, where experience is respected, and where the person who solves the problems gets the recognition for solving them. My name is Garrett Thompson, I'm 49 years old, and I finally found a company that was ready for the leadership I had to offer. They just had to watch me walk away with their biggest client to understand what ready actually looks like. Direct address to reader. Listen, If you're sitting in that cubicle right now, watching some MBA 20 years younger than you explain why you're not quite ready for the promotion you've earned through decades of real work, this story is for you. You know your worth. The question is whether you have the guts to make them prove it. The market always recognizes real competence, even when your current employer doesn't. Stop waiting for permission to be valued. Sometimes the only way to get respect is to show them what happens when you stop giving it away for free. Your expertise has a price, and it's time to collect.